Let's talk about the top 5 challenges to starting playing Infinity N5 in 2025. If you are considering starting the system or have just begun your journey into the game, you're going to want to watch this. Welcome to the Dice Gods. My name is Hydra, and if you, like me, have spent any time on the social media sphere of the wargaming world, you may have heard how challenging Infinity can be. How a lot of people bounce off the outside of it. A lot of people have a very bad feeling about it because it's hard, it's difficult, it's challenging. There's this issue, there's that issue. I hear you. And in today, we're going to talk about the 5 most common things that I've seen. Now, if you've not seen the channel before, you've not seen me before, I'm over a 10-year veteran of playing Infinity. So I know the system. I Corvus Belli. But also, I have been making making videos on this YouTube channel for about 3 years actively now, mostly focused around helping people get into Infinity successfully and get into the system, play the system, enjoy it, get the fun that I and so many of my other gaming buddies get from this system. So if that's what you want to do, if that's what you're looking for, welcome. If you're a veteran and you want to see whether your list tallies with my list, perfect. If it doesn't, whack your thoughts and any other challenges that new players may face in the comments, because we can always have a conversation about those things, and I'm always up for people's opinions. The idea here is to have a constructive conversation, though, because it's naive to say that there are no challenges in getting to Infinity. There are. There definitely are. But it definitely rewards the people that push through, or the people that find the most effective ways around to get into the system anyway. With that said, let's dive into it. First on the list, figuring out where to start. This is the problem that you face. There are about 34 factions inside of Infinity currently. That's going to jump up by 5 or 6, I think, within the next 12 months, with the various factions which are being added back and a new one that's dropping and all that kind of stuff. That is in itself overwhelming. Which do I play? We will talk about that. There are inconsistent starters, so you will find in the current Infinity range armies that have a action pack, which is 10 miniatures in a box. They're all for that faction. Great, brilliant. You will find currently 2 armies that are in a 2-player starter set, which is Sandtrap, which is my shoulder there. In there you have 7 miniatures aside, and then you can get beyond Sandtrap, slap that on there, and you get 10 miniatures aside, which is an action pack each. And then you'll find armies that only have starter boxes, so they only have 6 miniatures, and other ones which don't even have a starter set at all. You kind of need to get a bit of this and a bit of that, and it's a bit of a pickle. Now, it's worth mentioning that an average game of Infinity is around, it's important to say the around, 10 to 15 miniatures aside. So that's roughly where you're looking for. We play at 300 points, and there's a whole balancing act to be struck between the volume and the quality that you take. So if you take more troopers, they tend to be of lower quality, but there's benefits to that, and there's a whole discussion. Don't worry about that right now, but just be aware there is this completely inconsistent sort of structure. Then we have the 2-player non-starter set. So Sandtrap that I've just mentioned is a box which contains 7 miniatures aside, dice, tokens, and terrain, and no rules. Yeah, so it's not actually a very good starter set. There is the Essentials collection, so you'll find Infinity Essentials, which is for 4 factions, and you've got the Start Here box, which is for 2 factions. There's 2 up against each other, and that's actually a proper starter set because you get rules and dice and terrain and miniatures in there. So that Essential Start Here is definitely a starter set. The Essential sets for Nomads and for Yu Qing, which is technically a starter set, doesn't contain any dice, doesn't contain any terrain, doesn't contain any rules. And Operation Sandtrap, which looks, smells and tastes exactly like a starter set, isn't one, because there's no rules in there, and actually the miniatures that are in there are kind of not the best for new players to learn with in many ways. And that's not saying you can't. That's not saying you can't. In fact, on this here channel, we have a process by which you can, but more on that later. So you've kind of got the Essential Start Here box as a starter set, and then the rest is a bit of a pickle. Knowing what's good, what is good, which factions are good, which factions are not. There are 34. Some are more equal than others, shall we say. What do you actually what do you need? What do you have to have? There's not really any source for that. You need to dive into the rulebook, and we'll talk about, well, that's not great in a minute as well. Then you're going to find trooper boxes. So you'll find that there are boxes with 3 miniatures in now. They're reinforcements or fireteam boxes, all this kind of thing. Those can be a little bit of a challenge because you'll often find that you need 1 or maybe 2 of the miniatures in that box, but not the other ones. This is not entirely great. You have a lot of, for certain factions, out of production units. They're not available anymore. They're just not out there. Not knowing where you can get this miniature for this miniature for this miniature, whether it's out of production, whether it's never been produced, because some miniatures have never been produced, or whether it's just hidden in this box over here. It can be really hard to tell. And which mini is which? There are a lot of miniatures in the range, hundreds. In fact, I think last time I looked at the Corvus Belli website, there were 404 products on their website. That's a lot of stuff. And if some of that stuff contains multiple other miniatures within it, then it's going to be a challenge for you to figure out which one is which and which one you need. So some of this we can fix and some of this we can't. Choosing your first faction, first of all, rule of cool. Which one do you like? Which one looks awesome? There are stronger factions than others. That's absolutely true. For example, at the moment, you can comfortably argue in most cases that Ariadne is not in the strongest place. So if you're after the space werewolfy type faction, it's not necessarily that great currently. You can ask the community. Now that will involve a deluge of information being fired at you, especially if you go to Reddit or Facebook. If you have a local community that already plays Infinity, ask those chaps. They will be able to help and point you in the right direction, especially because they'll be local, so they'll know what's going on in the meta. This army is being played a lot, this one isn't. That's always useful information. Check out YouTube, channels like this. Now we have videos on here about choosing your first faction as a new player. We're doing faction focuses on every faction in the game, because I hate myself, where we talk in detail about how they fit together and what they do. And you can also, to figure out which miniatures are which, use the box. Now, I have props for this. So this is one of the new style of Infinity boxes. There are older ones that look like this. And these are the new ones. So with the new ones, you'll find on the top a QR code. If you scan that QR code, it will, in theory, give you the contents of the box and who's who. So you'll find out that's a Ludouan and that's a Rushi, because it'll bring up a website and show you. In theory, because this is also a new box. Now, this only contains 1 miniature, but this also has a QR code on the back. You see that there? It's a lovely little QR code right there. That takes you to a website which has the name of the miniature, which is Yamabushi, and no image written on it. I mean, there's one there, so you know what it looks like, but you know what I mean. So there was, I can't remember which box it was, one of the earlier boxes with the QR code on, went to a completely different box. They'd left one on from the previous design and yeah, messed it up. So it's there and it's improving, but like Sandtrap doesn't have that on. It's got a booklet inside which tells you which miniature is which miniature. But in theory, this, if you're not sure which miniature is which, ask the community. If you use the Army Builder online, as in on a PC or on a laptop, then some of the profiles do have images of which trooper is which. They've not done it for all of the profiles, so you can't be 100% certain. And if you want to find out whether a miniature exists or not currently, I would just type its name into the Corvus Belli web store. So go to infinitythegame.com, go to the web store on the main menu, doing the search, and it will tell you whether that thing exists. If it's not in that list, it probably does not exist, or you can cross-reference it to the Human Sphere website, which is a fan-run wiki, and it has all of the different, pretty much, out-of-production miniatures, current production miniatures, with images and background and fluff and all that kind of stuff. I will link Human Sphere in the description below. So that's a really good resource, actually. If you're not sure about a miniature, you're not sure who it is, but you know the faction, you can go through there and hunt manually, or just give it to the community, because we like finding what's what with different miniatures. That's our first problem. Second challenge is building a table. Infinity, more than any other system that I know, the table is crucial. Too much terrain and your heavy weapons will be severely nerfed. Too little terrain and your close range, close combat specialists will absolutely get slaughtered. There is a balance to be struck. What does a table cost? How long is a piece of string? How are you going to do it? What are you going to use? Anything from under €100 all the way up to getting onto 1,000 if you start putting LEDs and things like that, which certain wonderful people out there on our Discord have been showing off some lovely work. Gonks Games, just lovely work with LEDs and terrain. So, you know, it depends how far you want to go with it. The building and painting time, that can come into it too. If you've built a massive table with lots of different things in it, and it's, you know, it's much more beyond just boxes, then it can take a while. Do you need scatter or not? So the small pieces that only small troopers can hide behind, do you need those or not? Yes, you do. Plenty of scatter terrain, please. This is always useful. Storage, how do you store the damn stuff? And do you want more than one? These are all challenges that people face. Now, quickly running through this. So Infinity's played on a 4-foot by 4-foot table. You are going to need relatively dense terrain. You're going to need plenty of terrain to make the game viable. You tend to have asymmetric boards. Again, this is meta and region specific as well. So what the Americans call a table and what the Australians call the table and what the Dutch people call the table, these are different things. They look, feel and play different, and it's always interesting to see, especially when you put a picture up and you get one group of people saying, my God, there's so much terrain, and another group of people saying, where is all the terrain? There's none there. Same table, different perspectives. So I recommend a balancing act of, you need some height in there. You need some places that small things can hide, some places that big things can hide, some places where things can approach over buildings without being seen, all this kind of stuff. So, and you will definitely need scatter and stuff. So how do we fix it? Your first table, do your research online. Again, Reddit, Facebook. Ask people to show you their tables. Or if you go to Facebook especially, there's the global, the Facebook global group for Infinity, link in the description. They have frequently photos from tournaments from around the world, and you'll see what different tournament tables look like and how much terrain and dense stuff they've got. So there's that. You can also ask them at Reddit, etc. how people have their table set up. What does your table look like? Where does it come from? How did you make it work? How does it play? There is advice in the main rulebook. So there is a discussion about how much terrain and all this kind of stuff in there. For me, what they end up with is a little light, especially when you're learning. You need a bit more of a dense terrain setup than you do as you get more advanced. Look at the cardboard option. Corvus Belli produces, like with Sandtrap, there was a set of cardboard terrain that was in there, and the Start Here box contains a matching set. They're about to bring out an extension for that. That drops next month. So you wang those together, and you end up pretty much with getting on for a table of terrain. Cardboard is by far the kind of cheapest option that you've got if you want the pre-painted, so it's all nicely done up and all pretty. If you want that, cardboard is the great way to go. And it's relatively easy to store because it's quite light as well, which is kind of great. You can obviously 3D print stuff like the bottom of the screen there, I think. That is one from Sourceman Studios. Getting that stuff printed off can be phenomenal, can be beautiful. Especially if you get stuff from them, their work is lovely. Cannot recommend it enough. Do check that out. Link in the description. So you can 3D print your own terrain. I have friends that are doing that. They're designing their own stuff. They're cutting their own stuff with laser cutters. It's industrious beyond my comprehension. The downside that I'd put on 3D printed and laser cut stuff is you still need to paint it. So if you love doing that, if you enjoy painting 15 odd buildings, more power to your elbow. That is the way for you, definitely. Especially if you want to design your own stuff. Infinity definitely accommodates and encourages that. You can also buy pre-painted stuff. So on the previous slide, at the bottom of the screen there is MicroArt pre-painted terrain. So that is MDF with colour on it. So you put that together and it looks like that. That is both the quickest way, because it's all painted, you stick it together and away you go, but also the most expensive way. A table of pre-painted MDF terrain is going to set you hundreds of euros back, depending on which type you get and how much you spend with it. If you're in the US, Warsenal, link in the description, along with the MicroArt link as well. Warsenal do some phenomenally beautiful designs. Are they cheap? No, but they're also not cheap. They're also really, really nice looking. And I wish we could get them in Europe, but my bank balance is really glad that we can't. And the other option, whichever one of those looks good to you, the cardboard, the 3D print, or the pre-painted option, is to buy it with your friends. You can't play Infinity on your own at this point. You're going to need somebody to play against. Get a table of terrain with a friend. You just then need to argue over who's storing it, basically. I use the big plastic, really useful boxes to store my terrain and just carefully place it in at the end of every game. The only downside with that is if you're using the pre-painted stuff like with the MicroArts and with the Warsenal stuff, that can chip, so you need to be very careful when you're doing that, of putting them back in and taking them out, because they can wear over time. But I would say in many ways a good table or tables of Infinity terrain can be one of the most expensive things actually you're going to spend in this game. The armies are, they're not cheap. You're going to spend a few €100 to get a massive army. But that said, you can spend more on a fancy table of terrain from Warsenal or MicroArts or something like that. So yeah, that can definitely be a barrier. If you don't want to do any of that, find a local game store or a local hobby club. If they're already playing Infinity or they play other war games, they will have terrain that you can use until you decide which way you want to go. But picking up the starter set like the Start Here box, or the not starter set that is Operation Sandtrap, will get you some terrain to get going and will save you time. And those are, if not already, then at some point will be available to buy from the Corvus Belli website, just the terrain packs. Get multiple, it'll be great. So, death by tokens. Infinity is a game that has a lot of tokens with it. If you get one of these starter sets, you will get cardboard tokens in the box, but there are many tokens, because you will have conditions applied to your troopers, you will have statuses applied to your troopers, and those need to be monitored and tracked. So for ease, wounds. If you take a wound, you need to have that marked on troopers so that you know that it's there. So you need a wound marker. During your turn, you will spend orders. Those orders will be allocated in a specific way. You need to have a token for every order that you spend. And if you have 15 regular orders, 2 lieutenant orders, 3 irregular orders, 2 tack-aware orders, and some impetuous orders, boom! And that's just orders. That's before you get to all the other conditions and shapes. So how many do you need? If you're going to play Infinity a lot, and you're going to play a lot of different factions, quite a few. Which ones do you need? Yeah, that can be a challenge. Straight out the gate, that can be a challenge. Should you get all of them? No. No, you should not. No. Who do you buy from? And are they that important? Right. We're going to talk about this bit, the print and stick and the 3-bit, all this sort of stuff in a second. But first, are they important? Yes, they are fundamentally, crucially, massively important for you and your opponent at all times. With Infinity, you can have a condition applied to a miniature that lasts the rest of the game. And it will fundamentally impact the way that miniature works, the things it can do, all this kind of stuff. You have weapons that become unloaded. If you don't track the fact that it's unloaded or has been reloaded, that can be a problem, candidly. That can be a real big issue. You need to track all of these things. And the process of tracking an order through a turn is fundamental to your opponent understanding how the turn's going, what you're up to, how you're playing, and what they can do. So having a way of tracking that and being clear and concise on that is really, really important. Which do you actually need? There are templates for teardrops for like flamethrowers and electromagnetic weapons, and then circular templates for like pie plates. Those you're going to need. But let's start off with the print and stick. You can download from the Corvus Belli website a PDF with loads of tokens in, and then you can print those off and you can either get them printed on good quality cardboard if you want yourself and get them cut out. Wouldn't recommend that. Or you can get that done, and then people have stuck them with like see-through acrylic circles over the top of 1 inch in diameter. And you've got loads of different options. There's loads of ways that you can sort of perfect it. I've seen people that use them laminated, so they just put plastic front and back keys to it and then cut them out. These are all viable options. You can do that. That's the cheapest way to do it. You just download that PDF, link in the description, and then go to town, basically. Spend an evening with scissors or a hole punch, if you can get an inch hole punch, and use that to sort of get your tokens ready. The next one is to 3D print. There are lots of places out there where you can get STLs for the various tokens that you're going to need. Get those, print them off, paint, go crazy. That is another option, of course, if you have access to a 3D printer, if you have access to people that do it. Buy pre-made. So Micro Art Studio, who've mentioned before, Warstore, who've mentioned before, these guys produce tokens. You can buy those tokens and you're done. The great thing about that is that they are then done. It's literally just fire and forget, fire the order off, forget about it, deny all knowledge when it turns up, and be like, oh, that's so useful for my new game. Strange. But those are, of course, one of the most expensive ways of doing it. The most expensive way of doing it currently is the command panel, which is what you can see at the bottom of the screen there. That is a command panel from my friends at Micro Art Studio. And you can magnetize these, so you just slide things across. So the little green guys at the side there, the white arrows on those are orders, and then you slide them from green to red or red to green as to whether you've used them or not. It's a really tidy way of tracking all of the performance of your tokens and orders and all this kind of thing through the game. So command panels are definitely a route forward. What do you actually need to start off with, though? For your first few games, you can get away with the teardrop templates and the circular template, and then a bunch of orders, a bunch of wounds, some command tokens, because you'll need those, prone markers, and that will kind of do you. There's lots of other stuff you're going to use, but to be honest, for the first few games, keep it simple and just go for those. There's a wonderful set that Micro Arts produces. I will put that in the description below, and you can get that. That's a relatively cost-effective way of doing it, actually. It's not too expensive. It contains a lot of the stuff you're going to need. What you're going to need long-term, you will evolve that as you get into the game. You'll get a feel for the stuff that you need and the stuff that you want. But as a good core, orders, wounds, command tokens, templates is a good place to start, basically. Or, as I say, and prone. Or, as I say, the set from Micro Art Studio. So, the next challenge is learning Infinity, and this is the one you're going to hear a lot. That Infinity is hard, Infinity is brutal, Infinity is too difficult, it's too challenging, etc., etc. So let's look at that straight in the face. N5 is a 192-page living rulebook of stuff. The game itself is violent, it is intense. Things will die, you will lose the stuff you didn't want to lose. It is incredibly punishing for newbies. If you just join a mature community and go, I'm going to learn with you guys, let's just play normally, you're going to frickin' die. You just go into. And that includes, I hate to say it, if you've read the rulebook. You can read the rulebook for Infinity, but that's a little bit like reading the rules of the road and then saying you can drive a car. I mean, you've got the theory, but there's a whole world out there, and there are other drivers, and they may have read the rules of the road, and they may know them better than you do. In fact, they probably do. And this is not a good thing. So, it's very punishing for newbies, and it's highly interactive. This is not a game where you get to sit back and have your turn while your opponent has a cup of tea and a think. This is a game where you activate your troopers and your opponent can activate in response. They can do horrible things to you. You can lose more miniatures in your own turn than your opponent does, quite comfortably and quite easily. So this is a brutal game. You need to be aware of that going into it. There are over 50 skills, so we mentioned orders earlier. Each order allows you to do up to 2 skills, and there are 50 of them. you have to, every time you make you spend an order, you have to make a decision on which ones you're going to do, and that can be incredibly bewildering, incredibly headache-inducing. Because I often say that normally when you go up to and you play a war game, you're kind of like, okay, what should I do? And the game will lend itself to a direction. If you're playing bolt action, you have 6 things you can do. It's kind of clear what you want to do. If you say to Infinity, what should I do with this order? The response from Infinity is yes, which is incredibly unhelpful and incredibly accurate both at the same time, because you can do what you want. When you have 50 skills to work your way through, that's a lot. And then when you have over 100 weapons, bits of equipment, skills, other stuff to go with it, there's a wealth of options rammed into that 192 pages. And when you start the game, that will turn your brain to mush. And that 9 times out of 10 is what we hear, what I read and what I see myself. And people that bounce off this system is they go, it was too much. Yes, it was. Yes, it is. Infinity will absolutely break your brain if you let it. So, first of all, don't read the rulebook. Just don't. Leave it. It's only a PDF. It's only available digitally for free, but just leave it alone. You don't need it. What you need is the quick start rules. They're available for free. Download PDF from the website, and you will find a link in the description below for those. You need to learn the core processes and roles first. Before you read the rulebook, before you read too far into this, you need to know how to spend an order, resolve a BS attack, do a saving throw, and do a face-to-face roll. When you can do those 4 things, then you can start learning the rules. Because to a greater extent, every other skill, every other ability, every other weapon, every other piece of equipment is a variation on those themes. For example, a BS attack. There is a process for resolving a BS attack. That process is exactly the same as resolving a close combat attack, except a close combat attack has to mostly be in base-to-base contact. So if you can do a BS attack, when you come to do a CC attack, you'll be like, same thing, but without range. Gotcha. Learning these processes and getting them down is definitely the way forward. You then need to add in the rules and the options that you have in manageable chunks, as in just ignore anything else for your first few games. Camouflage doesn't matter, just shoot stuff, move, do the basics. So move, shoot, dodge, close combat and idle are the 5 skills that I recommend you learn your first couple of games with. Keep it simple and then add in manageable chunks later. Build on top of that. Which one should you do? I'll talk about that in a second. Find a war corps. There is a thing from Corvus Belli called a war corps, and a war corps is a volunteer member of the community who will teach you how to play. They invariably run their own community and all this kind of stuff. So I'm a war corps, and it means that I can be reached via the map, link in the description, and you can drop me an email and say, hey, I want to learn this game. Can you teach me? And then I'll book you in and get your demo sorted, and you could try and learn with me and join in the community that way. There are war corps all over the world. Not everywhere, but there's quite a few of us. We are quite enthusiastic. There's quite a few. Getting a war corps to help you out is definitely the best way forward, because they'll know the community, they'll know everything that's going on, so they'll be really well connected and be able to find you people that will be playing in the same way as you do and all this kind of stuff. Slightly biased, go to YouTube. I have a playlist on here called Learning N5, and that takes you through learning N5, strangely, in bite-sized chunks. It's the way that I have taught this game for going for 10 years, and it works because you start simple and then you build your way up. And by the time you get to the detailed rules, it makes sense because you have this foundation of understanding of how the basics works, the core processes, your BS attack, your saving throw. You know how to do this, and you're spending orders. You're doing the order spending process instinctively. You're not having to think about it. So there are other people that have done intros and stuff like that. Go find their stuff, look at their stuff, research their stuff, and play through it. Follow the examples of people like me. because we've done this a lot. So yeah, and don't be in a rush. It's there's so much to do inside of Infinity. The instinct can be just go, and try and build everything. Every week we put in another bunch of rules. You will get overwhelmed. I always say to new players that Infinity isn't, despite what you may think, complicated. It is deep. And just like with any swimming activity, if you go from I've never had my feet wet to I can't see the bottom, you're going to get in trouble really quickly. And Infinity will do that to you. If you try and learn everything simultaneously, no, it's not going to go well. So take your time, respect your brain cells, give them a break, give them a fighting chance, and just take it steady, take it slow. Finding the type of processes, say, that we have in learning M5 will help immensely with that. Next thing that we hear a lot of is writing a list. Writing a list can feel non-intuitive. There are so many options. You will come across individual troopers that will have 10 different profiles, if not more. So you've got one type of trooper and he has 10 different options of ways to build him. Which do you need? What do you need? There's a lot of base knowledge that you need. There is a lot of assumed knowledge when you open the army builder, and that can be incredibly challenging. And which profile is better? These are all things we see a lot. Which should I take? It's not that simple. Nothing is ever that simple, but especially not in Infinity. So building a list, the only thing you need to take on any list is a lieutenant. And only certain troopers have a lieutenant profile. Which one do you want? There's different categories. It depends what you do in the rest of your list. It depends, unfortunately. But that's the only thing you have to take in every list. To build a good list, you need to know your mission. So Infinity is a mission-based game. You will know ahead of time, and again, free PDF download. You can get the main missions for the tournament system, which is what people use for casual play as well. You can find those missions and you can learn how you're going to score, and therefore get an idea of what you need to do. You then need to get a plan. So in order for this to work, you need an idea of how the game works. This is where that brutal understanding of processes and all this kind of stuff comes into it. So you need to have a plan of how you're going to achieve the mission. If the mission requires that a certain type of trooper pushes a button to get a thing out and then controls it at the end of the game, you need to take that type of trooper. That's it. Simple as that. If the mission is kill everything and keep all of your stuff alive, then you need big guns that don't die. That's it. There's kind of, when you read the missions, they're relatively straightforward and clear. So therefore you can get an idea of how you should play the mission. And from there, you build yourself a plan. Then you have a mix of killers and specialists, or killers and guys that can do the mission. If you need to boop a boop, you need to flick a switch, you need to grab a box, a bunch of guys that can do that, and a bunch of other guys that can do violence while those missions are being achieved in the background. Having a mix is good. With this, experiment and have fun. This is supposed to be a war game, yes, but it's also a hobby. This is supposed to be how you're spending your sort of leisure time, your fun time. It's supposed to be enjoyable. Put together a list that looks like it's going to be interesting and hit the other guy on the other side of the table with it and see what happens. Sometimes it will work horribly and sometimes it will work great. That can be a tough way and brutal way to learn with the lists, but again, as I mentioned previously, we have there's a load of faction focuses. Robert Shepard is another guy. He's done some fantastic ones. There's lots of channels that are doing these faction focuses of, these are the great units in this army. These are some list ideas. Have a watch of those. Understand that including my own stuff on this is subjective. This is what I think, it's not a fact. And you can read the comments section below any video for any faction focus to see that. You'll get a whole bunch of people saying, yeah, no, I agree with what this video said, and a whole group of people saying, that's totally wrong, there's none like that at all. And they're both right. That's the joy of Infinity. But again, watch some videos, different sources, get some different ideas. Then go to the army builder with an idea of your mission, an idea of your plan, and put something together. Just stick it together. Stick it on the table and see what happens. Now, Infinity is great for proxying and things like that. As long as you have an Infinity Corvus Belli miniature, you can pretty much use it in a game. So it's perfectly legitimate to stick together a list with some stuff that, maybe you don't have the miniature for or whatever. As long as it's roughly the same size, you should be absolutely fine with your opponent. Just let them know you're proxying and trying stuff out. It's not a problem. And in fact, sometimes it's compulsory. You'll come across certain builds of trooper that there isn't a miniature for. So what are you going to do in that situation? A great example of that is if you are playing Shinden Butai for JSA, there is a type of trooper called a Tanuki, and Tanuki has 3 weapon loadouts, and Corvus Belli have released 2 of them, and the one they haven't released is incredibly useful and brilliant. So I own 3 Tanukis, 2 of them have the same weapon, and one of those is going to spend his life being very confused because the very big gun that he's got in his hand will fire like a very small gun because it's actually not that. I'm using it as something else. I'm proxying him as the other profile that we don't have a model for. And that's perfectly acceptable on the side of Infinity. There is no issue with that whatsoever. You're absolutely fine. So put together a list, have fun with it, mess around with it. If you know what your mission is, you know what you need to achieve, try and go and do that and put together a list that kind of does that. And you're going to be wrong. A little bit of a secret and spoiler for you, I'm frequently wrong too. I don't know any veteran that doesn't put together a list and be like, damn, I did not think it would play like that. And sometimes it's one way and sometimes it's the other. I took a list to a tournament that I was running, so I took a stupid list because I didn't want to win. I had no interest in winning. I was keeping up numbers and having a giggle. So I took a completely stupid list that was completely ineffective, and I know it was completely ineffective. And my first round draw, which was drawn at random, my list was the hard counter for my opponent's list. It happens, you know. This completely stupid list turned out to be incredibly uber versus this one guy, and I still feel bad about that. I had no way of knowing. It's just one of those things. But so yes, experiment, have fun, try different stuff. Don't sweat it. This is a hobby. This is supposed to be fun. Keep it that way. Keep it that way in your head. There's plenty of tournaments later where you can stress your evenings away trying to get to the absolute optimal build. But when you're learning, just have fun with it and use that as an opportunity to learn different things. And as we come to the end of the video, huge thanks to our channel members and Patreons, especially Archangels Chris Sexton and Mr. Cheshire, and our Nephilim Jim Callahan, Michael Rowan and Robert Foster. You guys are supporting this channel phenomenally. Thank you so much for your continued support and enthusiasm for what I'm doing on this channel. That's phenomenal. Also to the priests, you guys, there's always more of you. It's great. Thank you so much. The support that these guys are giving, plus the acolytes as well, which there's even more of. You guys are giving me the opportunity to create more videos and to do more stuff. And any success that this channel has can in no small way be attributed to you. So it's both your glory and your fault. If you'd like to support what we're doing here, then the Patreon and YouTube channel membership costs at entry level, for acolyte level, less than a cup of fancy coffee, and makes a hell of a difference to what I'm doing. So please do consider that. There's exclusive content on there, as well as getting your name on screen, and you get lots of free stuff and support, especially if you're learning the game. So we have resources and downloads that will help you learn the game and get even better with it. So do please consider checking that out. And with that, we're done. I hope that has helped you understand that, yeah, there can seem to be some challenges, some key challenges in learning Infinity in 5, but they are, for the most part, surmountable. And with a little bit of support, a little bit of community, you can very much take on board this game, learn to play, and learn to love it. Do please like, share, and subscribe. Get the word of the Dice Gods out there and what we're doing with Infinity. If you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, please do stick them in the comments below. And aside from that, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all again soon. Goodbye.